Welcome back to Saltwater Stories.
Great to be here.
So our research team, they just got back from a trip. It was meant to be, just a final bit of sunshine, relaxing before the school year kicks off again.
The last days of summer
Exactly. But, well, our team, curiosity always takes over.
always happens. They can't help themselves, can they?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
And they ended up uncovering something truly remarkable. This story, honestly, it was pretty far down our research list.
Right.
But after they spent time at this, well, frankly, magical place, it just became clear this story had to bubble up to the top, no pun intended.
Thankfully.
What started as just an end of summer getaway, it completely transformed into this amazing, insightful look at what happens when people really come together, for an incredible cause.
The shared mission.
Yes, a shared mission to protect something incredibly precious. They saw this powerful commitment to ocean conservation firsthand.
That must have been inspiring.
Absolutely. And what they discovered and what we're going to explore with you today is the fascinating work of the Atlantis Blue Project Foundation.
Ah, yes. The ABPF. It's a really interesting organization.
So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the Atlantis Blue Project Foundation?
Okay, so the ABPF, as we'll probably call it, was set up back in 2005. It was established by the Atlantis Paradise Island Resort itself.
The big resort in the Bahamas.
That's the one. You can think of the foundation as the resort's main philanthropic arm, but it's specifically focused on marine conservation. That's its whole purpose.
Okay, so it's directly linked to the resort.
Very much so. And legally, it's registered in the United States as a 501c3 nonprofit.
Which means it's a recognized charity, donations are tax deductible, that sort of thing.
Exactly. It's based in Plantation, Florida, officially.
And what's their main goal? What's the mission?
Well, their official mission statement is pretty comprehensive. It says they aim to foster the preservation and conservation of coral reefs, sea turtles, sharks, manatees, and cetaceans.
Cetaceans, so whales and dolphins.
Yes, exactly. Along with their Bahamian ecosystems through scientific research, education, and community outreach.
That covers a lot of ground. Reefs, turtles, mammals.
It does. And it goes on to say they also aim to create and promote solutions for a wide range of important environmental challenges. So it's broad, ambitious, and really vital for the health of the oceans in that region, especially around the Bahamas.
Definitely ambitious. And our team picked up on something kind of unusual about how it's run, its governance. It seemed a bit different from, say, a standalone charity.
That's right. Its structure is quite unique because it's so tightly interwoven with the resort. The foundation's board of directors. It's made up entirely of senior executives from Atlantis Paradise Island.
Really? Like the top people at the resort?
Yes, including the resort's president and managing director. It's not an independent board of outside experts or community members like you might find in many other nonprofits.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, it creates this very direct, very strong link between the foundation's activities and the resort's own operations and, frankly, its business strategy.
Okay.
The same people guiding the resort's success are also making the key decisions about where the foundation's conservation money goes and which projects get prioritized.
So conservation is kind of baked into the resort's planning.
In a way, yes. This close integration ensures that conservation decisions are naturally aligned with the resort's corporate vision, maybe its marketing goals too, which, can be a powerful engine for action. It means significant resort resources can be directed towards conservation.
Making it a core value, maybe, not just something separate.
That's a good way to put it. It's not just an add-on charity. It's part of the package.
So that naturally leads to the next question. How does it actually get its funding? If it's tied to the resort, where does the money come from?
That's where the model is. Well, pretty clever, actually. The ABPF's main income stream comes directly from the resort's own marine attractions.
You mean like when people pay to visit the aquarium or swim with dolphins?
Exactly. Things like the experiences at Dolphin Cay, guided snorkeling trips, even the marine-focused summer camps they run for kids. A portion of the money guests pay for these activities goes directly to fund the foundation.
So the guests are contributing without even necessarily realizing it sometimes?
Sometimes, yes, though it's often highlighted. Even special events, the resort hosts, like their Music Making Waves concert series, also contribute funds to the foundation. It's a model where guest enjoyment directly fuels the conservation work.
That is clever. It creates a kind of sustainable funding loop tied to the resort's business.
It does. Every time you participate in one of those marine experiences at Atlantis, you're directly helping fund marine conservation in the Bahamas. It integrates philanthropy right into the tourism package.
Does that also create a vulnerability? What if tourism drops?
That's the flip side. Absolutely. The foundation's financial health is directly tied to how well the resort is doing. If fewer people visit Atlantis, maybe because of a hurricane or an economic downturn, or as we saw recently, a global pandemic, then less money flows into the foundation.
Right,
It's like,
right.
imagine your school's art club was funded entirely by profits from your lemonade stand.
Yeah.
If people stop buying lemonade, the art club suddenly has less money for paint and brushes.
That makes sense. So the foundation's ability to fund these vital programs really depends on the resort staying popular and successful.
Precisely. It's a direct dependency.
And it sounds like the ABPF isn't just some separate charity getting checks from Atlantis. It seems like it's a really big part of the whole Atlantis brand.
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply integrated. The foundation's work, rescuing an injured dolphin, restoring a patch of coral reef, these become powerful, positive stories that the resort uses in its marketing.
To show they care about the environment.
Exactly. To position themselves as leaders in sustainable tourism. It enhances their reputation, definitely. And it helps attract travelers who are environmentally conscious, people looking for more than just a beach vacation.
They want to feel like their trip is doing some good.
Right. It shows how conservation can be a real, tangible part of the luxury tourism experience. It offers guests not just escape, but maybe a sense of contributing to something important.
Okay, so the branding makes sense. But one thing our team found really interesting was how the foundation actually does all this work. They noticed the foundation itself doesn't seem to have a huge number of employees on its own payroll. How does that work?
That's another key aspect of this intertwined relationship. The foundation operates with a very lean core staff.
So who does the work?
It relies almost entirely on the extensive facilities and, crucially, the expert team already employed by the Atlantis Resort.
Leveraging the resort's resources.
Completely. Take Dolphin Cave, for example.
Yeah.
It's that huge 14-acre habitat. Guests know it for the dolphin interactions, the educational stuff.
Right.
But it also houses a really sophisticated animal hospital. We're talking surgical suites, a pharmacy, labs. It's state-of-the-art. And that infrastructure, it serves as the main hub for the Bahamas Marine Mammal Stranding Network.
So if a dolphin gets stranded anywhere in the Bahamas?
They often get brought to Dolphin Cay for treatment and rehabilitation, using the resort's facilities and vets.
Wow. And who are the people doing the science, the animal care?
Well, Atlantis employs a massive team, over 165 marine professionals.
165, that's huge.
It is. Marine biologists, veterinarians, aquarists, lab technicians, a whole army of experts. And these people support the foundation's mission as part of their regular jobs at the resort.
So they're not paid separately by the foundation?
Generally, no. Their salaries and the facility costs are covered by the resort's operational budget. This makes the foundation incredibly efficient, cost-wise. It doesn't have to build its own multi-million-dollar facilities or hire dozens of specialists.
But again, that dependency.
Yes. It means the foundation's work relies heavily on the resort, continuing to provide these very significant resources, both the physical infrastructure and the dedicated time of its expert personnel. It's a deeply integrated operational model.
Okay, that clarifies the structure. Now, geographically, where does the ABPF focus its efforts? Is it just around the resort?
Primarily, their work is concentrated within the Bahamas, naturally, but also extends into the wider Caribbean Sea. This specific focus makes them a really important player for marine conservation in that whole vital, biodiverse region.
Got it. Okay, let's get into the actual programs. This is where our team got really excited. The scale and innovation are pretty impressive.
Yes, this is the hands-on conservation.
And one of the newest, most talked about initiatives is the Bahamas Coral Gene Bank. It officially opened, or is opening, June 2025.
That's right, June 2025. It's located right there at the Atlantis Resort, which is significant.
And what exactly is a coral gene bank? It sounds very high-tech.
It is, and it's incredibly important, especially right now. Think of it like a seed bank for plants, but for corals. It's a highly secure research facility, biosecure they call it, that acts as a living library.
A library of corals.
Essentially, yes. It holds coral DNA, but also, crucially, living fragments of many different coral species. And it allows these corals to live and even grow in a very controlled, protected environment, safe from threats out in the ocean.
Why is that so crucial right now?
Because coral reefs in the Bahamas, and frankly worldwide, are facing a devastating double whammy. First, Rising ocean temperatures from climate change are causing mass coral bleaching.
Where the corals turn white and can die.
Exactly. They expel the algae that feed them. And second, there's a horrific disease called stony coral tissue loss disease, or SCTLD.
SCTLD, I've heard about that. It sounds bad.
It's catastrophic. It spreads incredibly fast, like wildfire underwater, and it kills many species of hard corals, sometimes wiping out entire colonies in just weeks or months. It's an acute crisis.
So the gene bank is like an ark, a safe haven.
That's a perfect analogy. It's an ark for corals, preserving their genetic diversity, maybe even their very existence, away from the immediate dangers in the ocean.
How do they do that? What happens inside the bank?
Well, the approach is called ex situ conservation,
Ex situ.
meaning off-site or outside the natural habitat. The corals are kept in labs, in tanks, with carefully controlled water quality, temperature, and light.
So they can keep them safe from the disease and the heat stress?
Precisely. And it allows scientists to do some amazing things. They can actually induce coral spawning, that's coral reproduction, right there in the lab.
Oh.
By mimicking the natural environmental cues, like the cycles of the moon and seasonal temperature shifts that trigger spawning in the wild. This allows them to create new baby corals that are genetically diverse.
And genetic diversity is key for resilience, right? For adapting to future changes.
Absolutely essential. It's like having a wider toolkit of traits to draw upon to potentially survive future challenges like warming waters or new diseases.
You also mentioned microfragmentation. What's that?
Microfragmentation. It's a really powerful technique. Scientists carefully cut a coral colony into tiny pieces, microfragments.
Why would they cut them up?
It sounds counterintuitive, but it actually triggers the coral's natural healing response. And that healing response dramatically speeds up the rate at which the coral tissue grows back.
So cutting them makes them grow faster.
Much, much faster than they would naturally. Imagine if you pruned a bush really hard and it suddenly spurred lots of new, vigorous growth. It's kind of like that.
Wow.
This technique allows them to produce a lot more coral tissue, much more quickly, which is vital for eventually rebuilding damaged reefs when conditions improve.
So what are the goals for this gene bank? How many corals can it hold?
The ambition is pretty high. The goal is to eventually house up to 200 mature coral colonies, representing more than 15 different species. And they aim to have the capacity to propagate or grow tens of thousands of new coral offspring every single year.
Tens of thousands. That's amazing. And who's involved? Is it just Atlantis?
No, it's a major collaborative effort. Key partners include the Perry Institute for Marine Science, or PIMS, which has deep expertise in coral research. Also, the government of the Bahamas is involved, the University of the Bahamas UB, and the Bahamas Agriculture and Marine Science Institute, BAMSI.
So academia, government, NGOs, all working together.
Yes. And what's really great is that students from the University of the Bahamas are already involved, getting hands-on experience with this really cutting-edge conservation science, training the next generation.
That's fantastic. Okay, moving from corals to whole ecosystems.
Yeah.
Our team was amazed by the story of the Andros Westside National Park expansion, protecting an area of ocean the size of a small country. That sounds enormous.
That truly is a monumental achievement in marine protection. It's a huge deal.
How was ABPF involved in that?
Well, between 2005 and 2012, the foundation helped fund a really important scientific study. It was called a Rapid Ecological Assessment, or REA.
Like a health checkup for the ecosystem.
Sort of, yeah. A very detailed survey of the habitats and species on the west side of Andros Island, which is the largest island in the Bahamas. That research provided the crucial scientific data, the evidence, that was needed to make the case for expanding the protected area.
So the science came first.
Yes.
Huh.
And based on that science, the park was expanded from its original size of about 185,000 acres to an incredible 1.4 to 1.5 million acres.
Wow, that's a massive increase.
It created one of the largest marine protected areas in the entire Western Atlantic. And this huge area protects incredibly important nursery grounds.
Nurseries for what?
For commercially important species like lobster and snapper, vital for local fisheries, but also for endangered species like the small-toothed sawfish we'll talk about later, and several species of sea turtles. It protects their critical habitat.
And that involved other partners, too.
Oh, yes. Key partners in that effort were the Nature Conservancy, TNC, and the Bahamas National Trust, BNT, for handle park management and advocacy. It shows how scientific funding can directly fuel major policy wins for conservation.
Amazing. Now, you mentioned sea turtles. Who doesn't love sea turtles? It sounds like the foundation has a long-standing program for them.
They do. Protecting sea turtles is one of their core activities, and it's vital because all 7 species are endangered globally.
What does their program involve?
It's quite multifaceted. They actively monitor sea turtle nests laid on the beaches right there at Atlantis, helping to protect the eggs. They also run a head starting program.
Head starting. What's that?
That's where they collect some of the hatchlings, the baby turtles, and raise them in the resort's protected marine habitats for about 2 to 3 years.
Why do they do that?
The idea is to protect them during their earliest, most vulnerable stage of life when predation rates are naturally very high. Giving them a head start is thought to improve their chances of surviving to adulthood once they're released.
Does it work?
Well, they've released a lot of turtles through this program. The number they report is over 7,500 endangered sea turtles, bred, rescued, and released over the years. They also actively rescue and rehabilitate injured turtles found in Bahamian waters.
That 7 to 500 number is impressive.
It is. And another cool thing they do is sponsor the Sea Turtle Conservancy's Tour de Turtles. Have you heard of that?
I think so. Is that where they track them with satellites?
Exactly. They've been doing it for over 15 years. They help fund the attachment of satellite tags to turtles, and then researchers, and the public too, can follow their microfilms online. It provides incredible data on where these turtles go, their feeding grounds, their long journeys across the ocean. It's fascinating science and great for raising awareness.
That is cool. Okay, what about marine mammals? You mentioned the stranding network. What happens when a dolphin or maybe a manatee gets stranded? That must be a real emergency.
It's incredibly urgent and requires very specialized care immediately. The ABPF is a primary funder for the Bahamas Marine Mammal Stranding Network.
So they provide the money for rescues.
Yes, they cover essential costs,
Mm.
like getting the animal transported quickly, buying specialized equipment, paying for veterinary treatment, medications, even the food needed during rehabilitation.
And the care happens at Dolphin Cay.
Often, yes. As we said, Dolphin Cay has those amazing facilities and expert veterinary teams providing round-the-clock care for stranded dolphins or manatees. It gives these animals the best possible shot at recovery and hopefully release back into the wild.
That's fantastic that network exists. Okay, now for a really unusual creature, the small-toothed sawfish, you said it looks like it has a saw for a nose.
It really does. It's actually a species of ray, though often mistaken for a shark. It has this long, flat snout called a rostrum, lined with sharp teeth on both sides. It looks exactly like a saw.
What does it use it for?
They use it to detect prey buried in the sand or mud, and also to stun fish by slashing it back and forth. They are incredible animals, but sadly critically endangered.
Critically endangered. So really close to extinction.
Extremely close. Their populations have plummeted. So ABPF funds vital research and education focused on sawfish conservation, mostly through their partner, an organization called Saving the Blue.
How do they study them? They seem rare and probably hard to find.
They use non-invasive methods, which is key studying them, without capturing or disturbing them. This involves using drones for aerial surveys to spot them in shallow areas, side-scan sonar to map potential habitats, and BRUVs.
BRUVs, what are those?
Baited remote underwater video systems. It's like, imagine setting up a hidden camera underwater with a little bit of bait to attract marine life. It allows scientists to record video of sawfish and other animals in their natural environment without interfering.
Sneaky. It's like a nature documentary setup.
Kinda, yeah.
Oh.
These techniques help scientists figure out where the critical nursery habitats are, the shallow protected areas where young sawfish grow up. And the foundation also supports creating educational materials about sawfish for schools, helping kids learn about and care for this unique Bahamian resident.
Very cool. Now here's one that surprised me, sea urchins as reef heroes.
Yes, the humble sea urchin. They play a surprisingly critical role on coral reefs.
How so?
Well, as ocean temperatures rise, algae often grows much faster. And if there's too much algae, it can smother the corals, basically taking over the space and preventing new baby corals from settling and growing.
Like weeds in a garden.
Exactly. And sea urchins are like the gardeners. They're voracious grazers. They eat algae. By keeping the algae levels down, they help maintain clear space on the reef, which is essential for coral survival and recovery.
So more urchins equals healthier reefs.
In many cases, yes. The problem is urchin populations have crashed in many parts of the Caribbean due to disease in the past. So the idea ABPF is funding now is to test whether raising urchins in a nursery and then releasing them onto reefs can help control algae and give corals a fighting chance.
So they're funding the first ever sea urchin nursery in the Bahamas.
That's right. It's a research trial, a pilot project, to see if this approach works. If it does, it could be another valuable tool in the reef restoration toolbox.
Fascinating. Now, before the high-tech gene bank, were they doing other kinds of coral restoration?
Oh, yes. For years, ABPF supported more traditional underwater coral nurseries. You might have seen pictures. They often look like underwater trees or clotheslines made of PVC pipes or ropes.
Where they hang pieces of coral?
Exactly. They'd grow fragments of fast-growing species like staghorn and elkhorn corals in these nurseries. Once the fragments grew larger, they'd be outplanted or transplanted onto damaged reef areas,
Why did they move away from that?
primarily because of that devastating disease, SETLD. Those open water nurseries proved to be extremely vulnerable. The disease could sweep through and wipe out the nursery corals very quickly.
Ah, so they weren't safe out there anymore.
Sadly, no, it became too risky. That vulnerability was a major driver behind the strategic shift towards the land-based biosecure gene bank, where the corals could be much better protected from disease outbreaks. It really shows how conservation has to constantly adapt to new threats.
It really does. Let's dig a bit more into the science itself. You use the terms ex situ and in situ. Can you break those down for us again?
Sure, they're fundamental concepts in conservation. In situ means in the original place. So in situ conservation is about protecting species and habitats right where they exist naturally.
Like the Andros National Park expansion.
Perfect example. Protecting the ecosystem as it is, where it is. Ex situ, on the other hand, means off-site. So ex situ conservation involves protecting components of biodiversity outside their natural habitats.
Like the coral gene bank.
Exactly. Bringing species into a controlled environment like a zoo, aquarium, botanical garden, or in this case a gene bank, often as an emergency measure or for specific research or breeding purposes.
And both are important.
Definitely. You need in situ to protect whole ecosystems, but sometimes threats like widespread disease or habitat destruction make ex situ measures necessary to save species from extinction or preserve genetic diversity, like the arc analogy for the gene bank.
Got it. And those specific techniques in the gene bank, assisted sexual reproduction and microfragmentation, they sound really advanced.
They're at the cutting edge of coral science. Assisted sexual reproduction, as we touched on, involves mimicking natural spawning cues in the lab.
The light and temperature changes.
Right. This allows scientists to collect the coral eggs and sperm, fertilize them in controlled conditions, and raise the resulting larvae, the baby corals. The key benefit here is generating high genetic diversity, which is crucial for future resilience.
Giving corals a better chance against future threats.
Exactly. And microfragmentation, that technique of cutting corals into small pieces.
To make them grow super fast.
Precisely. It leverages their natural healing process to accelerate growth dramatically. This means you can produce much more coral biomass in a shorter time, which is potentially huge for scaling up restoration efforts later on.
It's amazing what science can do. What about monitoring? How do they track the animals they help, like the turtles or sawfish?
They use some pretty sophisticated technology. Satellite telemetry is key for the sea turtles and the tortoise turtles. Those tags transmit location data via satellite, allowing scientists to track migrations over thousands of miles.
So we can see where they go.
Yes. For sawfish, which tend to stay closer to shore, they might use acoustic telemetry. That involves tagging a fish with a transmitter that emits unique sound pulses or pings. Underwater receivers, like microphones, are placed in the area and listen for these pings, recording when the tagged fish is nearby.
So you can see which habitats they use most often.
Exactly. It helps map out their movements and identify critical areas like nurseries.
And you mentioned non-invasive surveys too, using drones and sonar.
Right. These methods are great because they allow researchers to gather data without stressing or even touching the animals. Drones give an aerial perspective, useful for spotting animals in clear, shallow water or mapping coastal habitats. Side-scan sonar sends out sound waves to create images of the seafloor, helping to map habitats or even locate large animals.
And the BRUVs, the underwater cameras.
Yes, baited remote underwater videos. They're fantastic for seeing what species are present in an area and getting relative abundance estimates, all without a human diver present who might scare the fish away. It's like being a spy in the ocean.
Very clever. And the foundation also funded report cards for ecosystem health.
Yes, that was a really important contribution. They funded the first coral reef health scorecard for New Providence and Rose Island back in 2015, based on data from 2011-2012.
Like a grade for the reef.
Pretty much. It assessed things like coral cover, algae levels, fish populations, and gave an overall grade. It provided a crucial scientific baseline, a snapshot in time showing the reef's condition and highlighting key issues.
What did it find?
One key finding for the New Providence reefs was a lack of grazers, specifically parrotfish and sea urchins.
Ah, connecting back to the urchin project.
Exactly. The report card scientifically identified that grazing pressure was low, which was likely contributing to higher algae levels. This research directly informed the rationale for exploring urchin restoration. It shows how funding baseline science can lead to targeted conservation actions.
That makes perfect sense. But with all this great science, are there still unknowns? You mentioned data gaps earlier. What kind of information is harder to get or maybe less available publicly?
That's a really fair point. Even with excellent research, there are always questions, especially about long-term impact. For example, while ABPF reports the number of corals outplanted from older nursery projects or the number of head-started turtles released getting publicly available, peer-reviewed data on their long-term survival rates after they're put back in the wild can be challenging.
So we know how many went out, but not necessarily how many made it long term.
Precisely. How well do those outplanted corals integrate into the reef? How many survive major bleaching events or disease outbreaks years later? For the head-started turtles, what percentage survive to maturity and successfully reproduce? Answering these questions requires very long-term, often expensive monitoring studies, and that data isn't always readily available for all projects.
So it's hard to get that complete before and after picture of the ultimate ecological success.
It can be. But as you said earlier, the very act of funding these programs, developing the techniques, establishing facilities like the gene bank, these are huge critical steps forward. They build capacity, advance the science, and provide hope, even if quantifying the final long-term ecological outcome takes many more years of study.
Right. It's progress, even if the final chapter isn't written yet.
Exactly. The efforts themselves are undeniably crucial for tackling these huge environmental challenges.
Okay, let's quickly recap the specific species and habitats that are really under the ABPF's wing. What are the main focuses?
Sure. Top of the list definitely are corals. Especially given SCTLD and climate change, preserving coral genetic diversity is priority number one. They're aiming for at least 15 key reef-building species in the gene bank, including the critically endangered staghorn and elkhorn corals.
Okay, corals first. Then
Sea turtles. All 7 species are endangered, but their hands-on work at the resort focuses particularly on green and hawksbill turtles, which nest there. Then sharks and rays, with that very specific focus on the critically endangered small-toothed sawfish. And finally, marine mammals, primarily dolphins and West Indian manatees, mainly through the rescue and rehabilitation work via the Stranding Network and Dolphin K.
and the habitats they're trying to protect.
Coral reefs are the highest priority habitat, obviously. They're protected through various strategies, marine parks like Andros, active restoration efforts, and now, critically, the gene bank.
Makes sense. What else?
Mangroves and coastal wetlands are also vital. They're crucial nursery grounds for so many marine species. Protecting these was a major win from the Andros National Park expansion.
And seagrass.
Seagrass meadows are incredibly important too, especially for storing carbon and as habitat for things like conch and turtles. While maybe not a direct focus of ABPF's specific funded projects compared to corals or mangroves, their importance is definitely recognized within the broader Bahamian conservation landscape that ABPF supports.
And all these efforts are aimed at specific threats, right?
Yes, they're directly targeting the biggest culprits. Climate change, causing coral bleaching the gene bank, aims to build resilience against that. Coral disease, especially SCTLD, the gene bank, is the emergency response. And habitat degradation and loss addressed through big actions like creating marine protected areas and through active restoration work. It's a multi-pronged attack on the major threats.
It's clear ABPF isn't trying to do all this alone. You've mentioned partners several times. It really sounds like collaboration is key.
Oh, absolutely essential. ABPF functions brilliantly as a funding and logistical hub, but they rely heavily on a network of specialized partners who bring unique expertise to the table.
Can you give some examples of who does what?
Sure. For the hardcore science and actually doing the work on the ground, you have partners like the Perry Institute for Marine Science, PRMS. They're huge on the coral gene bank. The Bahamas Marine Mammal Research Organization, BMMRO, is key for mammal rescues. Saving the Blue handles the sawfish and urchin research. The Sea Turtle Conservancy does the turtle tracking. These guys have the specific scientific skills and field teams.
Okay, the science implementers. Who else?
Then you have crucial conservation and policy partners, like the Nature Conservancy, TNC, and the Bahamas National Trust, BNT. They were vital for the Andros Park expansion and are involved in ongoing management and advocating for protected areas.
Big picture conservation groups.
Right, and for education, they partner with the Bahamas Reef Environment Educational Foundation, reef, for school programs and outreach. And academically, the University of the Bahamas, UB, and Bahamas I are key partners for research and getting students involved, especially with the gene bank.
And the government is involved too.
Critically, the Bahamian government itself, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Department of Marine Resources, the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, they are essential partners for making these national-scale initiatives happen and ensuring they align with the country's environmental goals.
Wow, that's quite a network. It really shows that tackling these huge ocean problems requires a real team effort, doesn't it? Everyone bringing their piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. No single organization could do all of this alone. The network multiplies the impact significantly.
Okay, let's talk money again. We know where it comes from, the resort activities. How does it flow out? Does the foundation give grants?
Yes, primarily. The foundation collects the revenue from the resort sources and then operates mainly as a grant-making entity. It provides grants to those partners we just discussed, who then use the funds to actually execute the conservation projects.
Do we know how much they typically give out?
Looking at their recent public tax filings, the IRS Form 990-PF, their annual cash revenues tend to be in the range of, say, $180,000 to $250,000.
Okay.
And their charitable disbursements, which are mostly those cash grants paid out to partners, are often somewhere under $150,000 per year. For example, in the fiscal year ending December 2022, they reported awarding $68,000 in grants across 4 organizations.
$68,000 in grants out from maybe $200,000 in revenue, something like that.
Turtles, yes, in that particular year. The largest grant that year was $50,000 to manatees, specifically for the Coral Gene Bank. Smaller grants went to the Sea Turtle Conservancy, TNC, and Saving the Blue. That pattern of targeted grants is pretty consistent.
Except maybe during the pandemic, you mentioned their expenses exceeded revenue one year?
Right. In the filing for the 2020 calendar year, reported in 2021, that happened. It was almost certainly due to the huge drop in tourism because of COVID-19 cutting their income, while their grant commitments and basic operating costs likely continued.
Okay, that makes sense. But this brings us back to that other number. The resort often mentions that ABPF has funded over $5 million in coral reef research and restoration initiatives over its lifetime. How do we square that $5 million figure with annual cash grants under $150,000? They seem worlds apart.
That's the million-dollar question, or rather, the $5 million question. And it really highlights the importance of understanding in-kind contributions in corporate philanthropy.
In kind, meaning not cash.
Exactly. That $5 million figure almost certainly includes the estimated value of significant non-cash contributions provided directly by the Atlantis Resort. These are incredibly valuable resources that are absolutely essential for the Foundation's work, but they don't show up as cash revenue or cash grants on the Foundation's specific tax form.
What kind of things count as in kind?
Think about it. The operational costs of running those world-class facilities, like the Dolphin Cay Hospital and labs, the use of resort boats to get researchers out to field sites, fuel for those boats, and critically, the salary time of that huge team of over 165 marine biologists, vets, and aquarists who dedicate part of their work week to support the Foundation's projects.
So the value of the staff's time and the use of the buildings and equipment.
Yes, these are massive operational expenses covered directly by the resort, not paid for by the Foundation's cash grants. But they represent a huge real value and are fundamental to the Foundation's ability to achieve anything. It's like, imagine your parent helps you bake cookies for a school fundraiser. They provide the ingredients, the oven, the electricity, and hours of their time helping you bake.
Right.
You might only report the $50 you made selling the cookies as your revenue, but the actual value of the support you received, including the ingredients and your parents' time, was much, much higher.
Ah, okay. So the $5 million likely includes both the direct cash grants and the estimated value of all that operational support from the resort over the years.
That's almost certainly the case. It's a common way for corporate foundations to represent their total contribution. But you need that context to understand why it differs from the cash-only figures on the tax forms. To see the full picture, you have to consider both.
That clarifies it a lot. Thanks. So looking at the overall picture, including those in-kind contributions, what are the tangible results? What has ABPF measurably achieved?
They have several major verifiable achievements. The biggest, arguably, in terms of long-lasting impact, is their role in enabling the expansion of the Andros Westside National Park, Helping fund that initial science led to 1.4 to 1.5 million acres being protected. That's huge, tangible habitat protection.
A massive policy win. What else?
On the species side, there's the widely reported figure of over 7,500 endangered sea turtles bred, rescued, and released via the head starting and rehabilitation programs. And they are a primary funder for the Bahamas Marine Mammal Stranding Network, which has verifiably rescued and rehabilitated numerous dolphins and manatees. That's direct animal rescue impact.
Okay, park expansion, turtle releases, mammal rescues. What about science baselines?
Their funding was instrumental in producing those first-ever ecosystem report cards, the Coral Reef Health Scorecard for New Providence, and the Mangrove Report Card for the Bahamas. Establishing those scientific baselines is critical for tracking change and guiding future management. That's a key scientific contribution.
And the coral work.
They have consistently reported establishing traditional coral nurseries and outplanting thousands of coral fragments over the years. While specific, large-scale, long-term survival data for those outplants isn't always prominent in recent public materials, the effort itself and the development of the techniques were significant. And now, of course, the major investment in the Coral Gene Bank represents a huge future-focused achievement and progress.
Let's circle back to the Andrews Park expansion again. It's such a standout achievement. How did that process work after ABPF funded the initial science?
Right, so ABPF, or the Kerzner Marine Foundation as it was then, provided key funding around 2006 for that rapid ecological assessment, working with TNC and BNT. That study scientifically documented the immense ecological value of the Andros West Side, the mangroves, the flats, the creeks, all teeming with life and acting as vital nurseries.
The proof needed.
Exactly. That scientific evidence then became the foundation for a multi-year advocacy campaign led primarily by partners like the BNT and TNC. They engaged local communities, presented the findings to the government, and really pushed for the expansion.
So the science fueled the advocacy.
Precisely. And that sustained effort eventually led to the Bahamian government officially declaring the massive expansion of the park's boundaries in 2012.
And the impact is protecting those nurseries for lobster, snapper, sawfish, turtles.
Yes. Safeguarding those critical habitats for commercially important species and endangered wildlife is the core ecological benefit. While ABPF's role was primarily the initial catalyst funding the science, it was a pivotal first step. The long-term management and monitoring, of course, fall to the BNT and the government.
Do we know how well the ecosystem inside the expanded park is doing now compared to before?
That's a good question. Detailed ecological monitoring data showing trends after the 2012 expansion, like changes in fish populations or biodiversity indices within the newly protected areas, aren't readily available in public reports associated with the foundation. But the policy achievement itself, securing that massive protected status, is undeniable and provides the essential framework for long-term ecological health.
Got it. Now, that Coral Reef Health Scorecard for New Providence, giving reefs a grade, what were the key takeaways from that study?
It was a really innovative way to communicate reef health. Remember, this was based on data from 2011-2012. The study brought together all the key environmental groups and used the Standardized Assessment Protocol, AGGRA, to survey reefs all around New Providence and nearby Rose Island.
What did they measure?
4 main things. How much live coral cover was there? What was the physical structure of the reef like? How many large groupers, important predators, were present? And how many grazers, parrotfish, and urchins were keeping the algae in check?
And the overall grade wasn't great, I gather.
The overall health was assessed as poor for the reefs around New Providence at that time. It provided that crucial baseline and specifically highlighted the low numbers of parrotfish and urchins as a major concern.
Directly leading to policy recommendations.
Yes, the report recommended actions like establishing more marine protected areas around the island and strengthening protections for parrotfish, which are vital grazers. It was a solid piece of baseline science.
But the limitation is its age now.
Exactly. That data is now over a decade old. It predates several major coral bleaching events and, critically, the arrival of SCTLD in the Bahamas. So the health status of those reefs is unfortunately likely very different and probably worse today. But the report remains valuable as a historical benchmark.
Okay, let's talk about the Sea Turtle Head Starting Program again. That 7,500 release number is really striking. How exactly does that work day to day?
It's a very hands-on process. Staff monitor the Atlantis beaches for nesting green sea turtles. When a nest is laid, they might carefully collect some or all of the eggs. These eggs are then incubated in controlled conditions. Once the hatchlings emerge, instead of heading straight to the ocean, they're moved into the resort's marine habitats, protected lagoons, or tanks.
And they stay there for how long?
Typically for 2 to 3 years. They're fed and cared for, growing much larger than they would in the wild during that vulnerable early period. The idea is that by protecting them from predators when they're small, more will survive overall.
And then they're released.
Yes, often in coordinated release events, sometimes involving resort guests, which is a powerful educational tool. The turtles, now significantly larger, are released into the ocean.
It sounds like a great idea. Are there any downsides or debates about it?
It's actually a topic of ongoing scientific discussion globally. While the intention is excellent to boost survival rates, some scientists raise concerns about potential unintended consequences.
Like what?
Concerns include the risk of disease transmission from a captive setting to wild populations, the possibility that turtles raised in captivity might not develop the natural foraging or predator avoidance skills they need, or even that the temperature control during incubation could skew the sex ratio of the hatchlings. Turtle sex is temperature dependent.
Interesting points.
And as we mentioned, there isn't publicly available data tracking the long-term survival and reproductive success of these specific 7,500-plus head-started turtles after release. So while the number released is impressive and the educational value is high, the ultimate, independently verified conservation benefit compared to, say, protecting nesting beaches is still an area requiring more long-term research to fully quantify. It's complex.
It really highlights how conservation isn't always straightforward. Good intentions need rigorous science to back them up long term.
Absolutely.
Let's shift to education. Inspiring the next generation seems crucial for long-term ocean health. How does ABPF approach that?
They do this primarily through partnerships. While they don't run their own schools or develop their own formal curricula, they provide funding and support to organizations that specialize in marine education in the Bahamas.
Like Reef, you mentioned them.
Exactly. The Bahamas Reef Environment Educational Foundation, Reef, is a key partner. ABPF supports initiatives like Brief's virtual coral reef field trip.
A virtual trip.
Yeah, it's a fantastic digital tool, especially for kids on the more remote Bahamian islands, the family islands, who might not get the chance to snorkel on a vibrant reef. It brings the reef into the classroom digitally.
That's clever.
ABPF also supports Brief's Extreme Hangout Bahamas, which sounds cool. It's a climate action event connecting students directly with scientists and policymakers to talk about ocean solutions, empowering youth voices.
And the sawfish education.
Right. Through their funding to Saving the Blue, they help create children's books, curriculum materials, and support school visits focused specifically on sawfish conservation, teaching kids about this unique and endangered animal.
So targeting kids through specialized partners. What about educating the tourists at the resort?
That's perhaps their biggest direct educational outreach channel. Conservation messaging is thoughtfully woven into many of the paid marine experiences offered at Atlantis. Well, programs like the Junior Ultimate Trainer for a Day, or the behind-the-scenes tours of the vet hospital, or the Marine Adventure Summer Camp, they all include educational components about marine life, conservation challenges, and the work the foundation supports.
So learning while having fun.
Exactly. It serves that dual purpose we talked about, educating a huge international audience of tourists who pass through the resort, raising awareness about marine conservation, while also generating the revenue that flows back to the foundation to fund the work. It's a very synergistic model.
And they use big events, too, like Earth Day.
Yes, they leverage awareness days like World Ocean Day and Earth Day to highlight their conservation efforts through press releases, social media, and resort activities.
Yeah.
And 2025 is their 20th anniversary, so they're using that milestone as a year-long theme to promote conservation and their achievements even more widely.
It sounds like a comprehensive approach. Beyond the hands-on work and education, does ABPF actually influence government policy on ocean protection in the Bahamas?
They certainly have. The most direct, significant example is, again, the Andros West Side National Park expansion. Funding that critical scientific assessment provided the necessary justification for the government's policy decision to expand the park boundaries so dramatically. That's a clear case of private funding directly enabling a major conservation policy outcome.
Providing the evidence needed for action.
Precisely. And the new Coral Gene Bank is another example of influencing national strategy. It's a high-profile collaboration involving the Office of the Prime Minister and multiple government departments. It positions ABPF as a key partner in implementing the Bahamas' national response to the coral crisis, directly supporting the government's conservation priorities.
So they act more as a catalyst through science and funding rather than direct political lobbying.
That seems to be the primary mode of influence, yes. providing the scientific basis or the critical infrastructure needed for large-scale habitat protection or species recovery initiatives, which then enables or supports government action.
Okay. Now, no conservation effort is without challenges. What are the major risks or constraints that ABPF faces?
There are significant ones, both ecological and operational. Ecologically, the sheer scale and pace of environmental change are immense hurdles. Climate change keeps driving up ocean temperatures, causing mass coral bleaching that can undo years of restoration work in a single season.
Wiping the slate clean almost?
It can feel like that. And major hurricanes are a constant threat in the region, capable of physically devastating reefs and coastal infrastructure, including potentially their own facilities.
And the disease, SCTLD.
That remains a massive, acute threat. It's the immediate crisis that forced the pivot to the gene bank. It demonstrates how quickly conservation strategies have to adapt to new, overwhelming ecological disasters. These are huge forces, largely beyond human control.
What about the financial side? We talked about the link to tourism.
That dependency is a major financial vulnerability. Any significant drop in tourism at Atlantis, whether from a pandemic, a recession, a bad hurricane season, directly cuts the foundation's funding. This can jeopardize ongoing programs and limit their ability to respond to new conservation needs. It's the inherent risk of that funding model.
Are there other considerations, maybe reputational?
Yes, that's worth mentioning. The governance structure, with resort executives on the board while ensuring alignment, does open the door to potential perceptions of conflicts of interest, where business goals could theoretically influence conservation decisions. Transparency is key here.
And the link to Dolphin K.
Right. The fact that a significant portion of the funding comes from experiences involving marine mammals housed at Dolphin Cay places the foundation within the ongoing, often heated, public debate about keeping whales and dolphins in captivity for tourism. Even if the foundation's conservation work is stellar, this association can create reputational challenges or attract criticism from animal welfare groups who oppose such practices.
So they operate within that complex public discussion.
They do. It's important for listeners to understand these nuances.
Looking ahead, what's the biggest single risk to their long-term goals?
I'd say it's the combined relentless pressure of climate change and SCTLD. The Coral Gene Bank is a vital defense, an arc, but it's fundamentally a strategy to buy time and preserve options. If the ocean environment continues to degrade rapidly, if temperatures keep soaring and the disease remains rampant, the ultimate goal of successfully restoring large areas of healthy reef by outplanting corals becomes incredibly challenging, perhaps even futile in some areas. It's a daunting race against time.
That really puts the urgency into perspective. Okay, we've explored ABPF in detail. How does it stack up against other organizations doing similar work, particularly coral restoration, around the world? Is their model common?
It's actually quite distinct when you compare ABPF, a corporate foundation, funded by resort revenue, heavily invested in facilities, and now focusing significantly on ex situ gene banking to other models. The differences become clear.
What are some other models?
Well, you have your traditional nonprofits, like, say, Reef Renewal Foundation Bonaire. They typically rely on donations and grants. Many focus on in situ nurseries growing corals out in the ocean. And they often provide very detailed public reports on their metrics, like corals outplanted and survival rates.
Okay, donation-based ocean nurseries. What else?
Then there are for-profit social enterprises. Coral Vita is a good example. They might use investment capital, focus on land-based coral farming, often at a commercial scale, and sometimes work on techniques like assisted evolution to breed tougher corals. It's a business approach to restoration.
Interesting.
You also have community-based NGOs. Think of Fragments of Hope in Belize. They often rely on smaller grants and maybe ecotourism funding. Their strength is deep integration with the local community, training fishers or guides in restoration. And they've shown really impressive localized results in increasing coral cover.
Grassroots effort.
Exactly. And finally, you have the large international nonprofits, like the Coral Restoration Foundation, which operates on a huge scale, has large budgets, publishes extensively in scientific journals, and outplants massive numbers of corals.
So compared to those, what are ABPF's unique strengths and maybe weaknesses?
ABPF's big strengths are that incredible access to Atlantis's world-class facilities and its large expert marine team that's a huge operational advantage. Plus, the direct funding stream from resort activities provides a relatively stable base, unlike chasing grants all the time. And they've proven they can achieve major policy impact, like with the Andros Park.
And the other side,
Compared to some peers, they might lack fully independent governance.
Mm.
Access to raw research data for independent analysis might be less public than some academic or NGO groups.
Mm.
And they don't have a large-scale public volunteer program engaging people beyond resort guests in the hands-on work. So it's a specific, highly integrated model with its own pros and cons, not better or worse, just different.
That's a really helpful comparison. So what's next for ADPF? What's their roadmap for the future?
The absolute primary focus right now, and for the foreseeable future, is the successful operation and scaling up of the Bahamas Coral Gene Bank. That's priority number one.
Making the ark bigger and better.
Essentially, yes. And the goal isn't just preservation. It's active research to identify and propagate supercoral strains that naturally show more resistance to heat stress and maybe even disease. The ultimate aim is to use these tougher corals to eventually seed restoration efforts back onto Bahamian reefs when and where conditions allow.
Do they have specific targets for the gene bank?
They do. Those ambitious goals we mentioned. Housing up to 200 mature colonies across 15-plus species and building the capacity to produce tens of thousands of genetically diverse coral offspring each year. Those are the concrete benchmarks for the next few years.
And technologically?
The huge investment in the gene bank clearly signals their commitment to advanced ex situ techniques that assisted sexual reproduction for diversity and microfragmentation for rapid growth. And their funding of the sea urchin trial shows they're also open to exploring novel ecosystem-level approaches. They're definitely embracing innovation.
So the top environmental priorities for the next, say, 3-5 years.
Continue the emergency rescue mission against SCTLD by getting as much genetic diversity safely into the gene bank as possible. Actively research and cultivate climate-resilient coral strains, and really scale up the coral baby production pipeline, ready for future restoration opportunities. It's about building resilience and future capacity.
What are the biggest hurdles they might face in achieving that?
We touched on them. An ecological catastrophe, like a direct hurricane hit on the gene bank itself, would be devastating. A severe, prolonged tourism downturn could cripple funding. The scientific techniques, while promising, might face challenges in scaling up to the massive numbers needed for large-scale impact. And the big one, if the background environmental conditions in the ocean keep deteriorating too fast, finding suitable places to successfully outplant even resilient corals could become the major bottleneck.
A sobering reality check. Now, thinking back on our discussion, there are still a few open questions or areas where more information would be interesting, right? Like the finances.
Right. That $5 million funded claim versus the annual cash grant figures on the tax forms. While the in-kind explanation makes sense, having a clearer public breakdown from the foundation itself detailing cash grants versus the estimated value of resort support over the years would provide even greater transparency and fully clarify that number for everyone.
And the impact metrics.
Yes. More publicly accessible long-term data would be incredibly valuable. What are the survival rates of those outplanted corals after 5 or 10 years? What percentage of the 7,500 head-started turtles are confirmed to have survived and integrated into wild populations? Having that kind of verified long-term impact data allows for a more robust, independent assessment of program success.
Governance details.
While the board members, the resort executives, are known, more public detail on specific conflict of interest policies or internal foundation bylaws could offer greater insight into how decisions balancing business and conservation are formally managed.
And operational specifics.
Just out of curiosity, knowing the exact percentage of revenue from guest marine experiences that's allocated to the foundation would be interesting, though that's likely considered proprietary business information by the resort.
Right. And it's important to stress, these aren't necessarily criticisms. They're more points that highlight the complexities and the ongoing journey towards maximum transparency and verified impact in the conservation world, especially for unique models like ABPF.
Exactly. It's part of the continuous process of learning, adapting, and improving how we measure and communicate conservation success.
Wow, what an incredible exploration into the world of the Atlantis Blue Project Foundation. From, rescuing stranded dolphins and endangered sea turtles to building that absolutely groundbreaking coral gene bank. It's truly amazing to see what can happen when real dedication, resources, and science come together for our oceans.
It really is. We've learned so much today about how this unique blend of tourism funding, resort infrastructure, Cutting-edge science, education, and strategic partnerships can make a real, tangible difference in trying to preserve these vital marine ecosystems in the Bahamas and beyond. It's genuinely inspiring to see these efforts tackling such huge challenges head-on.
Absolutely. Our research team is always curious, always learning, digging up these stories for Saltwater Stories. After uncovering such an insightful look at this foundation, I really hope they managed to get some relaxation in during that trip. Maybe they even spent some quality time floating down a lazy river somewhere.
Here, let's hope so. They deserved it after that discovery.
We sincerely want to thank all of you for joining us on this exploration today. Learning about the Atlantis Blue Project Foundation certainly leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, what small actions can each of us take in our own lives? Or what causes can we choose to support, to contribute, even in a small way, to the health and future of our planet's incredible blue spaces?
It's a question we should all be asking.
Yes, only something to ponder.
Yeah.
Thanks again for listening. See you next time on Saltwater Stories.